Our lives have become more dependent on and driven by technology. The advances in information systems and technology have solved problems but also created new ones. As we go through our lives day by day, we are being recorded without our consent and we are being scanned without our knowledge. We are also volunteering our private information to companies in one form or another, for one reason or another. Should all of this information be allowed to be used without our consent? If so, how much of a citizen's private information should be available to the public for public use, and who should make this decision? Have you ever used your phone to research a topic and the subject you were thinking of pops up? Have you ever noticed that after you use Google Maps to get to work, the next day it tells you your work commute time? If you feel you are being watched, you have good reason, and you are not alone. We are being tracked every day by smartwatches, Alexa, Siri, fitness trackers, our cars, Google, and Instagram and other electronic devices. One of the biggest data collectors is the cell phone, which 96% of Americans now own. CCS Insight report states that 71 million smartwatches and 40 million fitness trackers were sold in 2018. Amazon has sold more than 100 million Alexa-enabled devices. Automakers reported 17.27 million vehicles sold in the US in 2018, which all included data collecting computers. New York City uses multiple types of surveillance equipment to track all residents and visitors. In 2017, the city acquired state-of-the-art facial recognition technology for the purpose of scanning faces of all drivers commuting between the boroughs. By 2015, there were approximately 17,000 cameras watching their streets and more than 4,500 cameras throughout the subway system, which are housed in what look like electrical conduits. Every day, users knowingly and unknowingly trade their data for goods and services with companies that profit off of their personal information. Some people make this trade instead of paying with money. Users allow at least 77.4% of websites to track their data so they can use the site. But where do we draw the line? It's okay if Uber remembers our home address for our future use, but giving that information to a public database will be a violation. We're okay with targeted Facebook ads, but not with them selling access to our profiles to potential employers or landlords. Big box stores like Walmart have access to different customer data, including name, physical address, and purchase history. In 2013, Walmart CEO of Global Commerce said, "We want to know what every product in the world is. We want to know who every person in the world is. And we want to have the ability to connect them together in a transaction." Toll transponders in cars allow commuters to go through bridges and toll roads without having to stop and pay. The San Francisco Metropolitan Transportation Commission collects data from these devices for traffic studies. Consumers sign an agreement that lets GM anonymously tap their Chevrolet Volts for information about its performance. The Nissan Leaf lets owners monitor their electric car from their smartphones, while the automaker can access information like GPS, speed, driving habits, and battery use. A medical center's two-site survey of their personnel shows their willingness to share clinical data for research. On average, 53% were somewhat or definitely willing to share clinical data with identifiers, and 89% were somewhat or definitely willing to share without identifiers. The data of most concern was substance abuse, domestic violence, and mental health. Thanks to vehicle-to-vehicle or V2V communication, vehicles can wirelessly exchange their information with other vehicles, including their speed, location, and direction in which they are traveling. This allows vehicles to send and receive omnidirectional messages, which creates a 360-degree awareness of other vehicles within range. Vehicles then use messages from surrounding vehicles to determine potential crash threats as they develop. With this technology, drivers are sharing their driving information with multiple unknown other drivers all at the same time. Today's cars have electronic data recorders, or EDRs, also known as black boxes. The EDR goes into action if the car's airbags deploy in a crash. It records the vehicle's speed, status of airbags, braking, and acceleration. It also detects the severity of an accident and whether the passenger seatbelts were buckled. Visionic's Faces software can pick someone's face out of a crowd, extract that face from the rest of the scene, and compare it to a database full of stored images. As you walk down the street, you are oblivious to the cameras that are capturing your image, comparing it to your databases, and storing that information in another database. License plate readers use small, high-speed cameras to photograph thousands of plates per minute. The readers capture the license plate number along with the location, date, and time of the scan. The information is collected and distributed to databases and other regional sharing systems. As a result, enormous databases of innocent motorist information is growing rapidly. This information is often retained for years or even indefinitely with few or no restrictions to protect privacy rights. Should we still have the reasonable expectation of privacy or anonymity? Today's society is in the information age. This information is stored by third parties, including internet service providers, phone companies, websites, and merchants. In the wake of some courtroom cases, courts were uncertain as to how the privacy of electronic communications should be handled. Some courts interpreted the third-party doctrine and determined there was no expectation of privacy in non-content information. Big data has become a great asset for many organizations, promising improved operations and new business opportunities. However, big data has increased access to sensitive information that, when processed, can directly jeopardize the privacy of individuals and violate data protection laws. Because consumers often opt to give away data when it benefits them, some say privacy issues are no cause for concern. According to a former top GM safety expert, fears have been blown out of proportion. The Center for Disease Control, or CDC, tracks threats to health and leading causes of death. By gathering personal information on babies who died of SIDS, the CDC was able to give guidelines to parents on how to keep their infant from becoming a victim. Convicted sex offenders are aware that their DNA is added to a DNA database to be used to solve other crimes. Consumers freely give their DNA to companies that analyze it for ancestral history without knowing it also can be used to solve crimes. In April 2018, 72-year-old Joseph James DeAngelo was arrested for many unsolved rapes and murders that were committed between the 70s and the 80s. In 2018, law enforcement entered crime scene DNA into the GED Match database, an open source website that allows users to upload their genetic profiles from consumer genetic testing sites and make the profiles public to other GED Match users. This DNA sample identified an individual who was biologically related to the suspect. This eventually led them to DeAngelo. Apple is a technology leader that prides itself on the safety and security of its products. The FBI needed help in unlocking the iPhone of a gunman who killed 14 people and was then killed by law enforcement. They asked Apple for its help, but Apple refused. The case was taken to court and Apple was ordered to help unlock the phone. The argument can be made that regardless to whether the data is collected willingly or unknowingly, public safety should have priority over an individual's privacy. But while consumers' private information can be used for the good of the general public, there is always a real possibility that it can be misused. There will also need to be regulations enacted to protect individuals' privacy while protecting the public. Amazon has a facial recognition software called Amazon Rekognition. It is being used by companies to build facial recognition databases on American citizens. Ironically, Amazon doesn't disclose its recognition customers without their consent. Last year, the Senate proposed a bill that would limit businesses from collecting and tracking facial recognition data without consent. Further research to determine how private information can be kept private while still helping the general public would help in determining who has priority.